What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in tonight to the Among the Ashes podcast. We're your hosts, Wes and Chris. Got a great show planned for tonight. It's part one of a part two series with a longtime friend of the show and someone that I've known personally for all of his life, Drake Pittman. Drake's going to share about his battles with addiction and how he spiraled out of control with the death of his mother and all the challenges that came along with that. And oddly enough, how he found sobriety with the passing of his father just a few short years later. He's also going to talk about what it was like growing up in good old Walker County. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's episode with Drake Pittman. Mr. Drake Pittman, how you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Since birth.
Yeah, since birth, right? Known him forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here we are, middle-aged men.
Yeah, middle-aged, man. Yeah, I'm middle-aged. I'm at that point for sure, Chris.
I think you're past middle-aged, honestly.
Man, and well, I'm 25. I mean, is that middle-aged yet?
25? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 25.
You
25 going on 50. How old are you, Chris?
I'm 33.
33?
34.
34. So I knew y'all were pretty close together. So what's funny is both these guys came through my youth group. I've known Drake your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, pretty much. I mean, at least maybe 2, 3, 4 years old, somewhere in there. I've known him pretty much.
Family.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we are family.
Yeah.
I mean, we're related somewhere down the road. I know.
I just
somehow.
look like counting the leaves on the family tree.
Right. Well, mine goes straight up. So,
Yeah.
you know, it don't fork off. There's not many leaves. So, you know. And then I've known Chris 20 years.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
So, you know, 15 years at least. So it's been a long time. So, yeah. So, well, hopefully we got a good show for you. Got some interesting things to talk about. So, yeah, I guess we'll get into it.
Sounds good.
We're good. So, Drake, you're 34 years old?
Yeah.
34 years old, graduate of Door High School.
Yeah.
Good old Walker County, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm proud of it, man.
Me too, man. Like, I went to Hayden till, well, I mean, I live in where we live now, but I grew up here, went to Hayden for, I don't know, till 10th grade and then graduated from Door. And as much as I love Hayden, like, I feel like Door is just as much a part of my life.
Yeah.
Probably even bigger, I guess. My formative years, I guess, so to speak, there, you know. People give it a lot of hate, but
I live in Jasper now, and I still wear the Door hat. I still go to Door games.
yeah.
Still play golf in Dora.
Yeah, well, you know, my kids, they're all, my chair, they're all corner athletes, and we play Dora. And anytime we go to play, I find myself rooting for Dora.
Mm-hmm.
I can't root for corner. I can't. I'll try to.
I can't root for Jasper.
Yeah. Well, why would anybody root for Jasper though? You know.
Ask my wife.
Well, yeah. Happy wife, happy life.
I married up.
You did, man. You did. Yeah. I get it. Well, I think we all did in this room.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
even though we're all incredibly good looking, our wives are a lot better looking than we are.
For sure.
Yep.
At least in my opinion, for sure. So, like I said, we've known each other forever. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, just off the cuff. What do you do? What are you into?
Well, without going into too much detail about my daily job, I work in healthcare.
Sure.
I don't like talking about it too much.
Right.
It's just a job.
Right.
But spare time, podcaster, content creator,
Right.
living life,
Yeah.
90 miles an hour.
Yeah. Which is how we got here tonight. So I've been putting off doing this for several years. Number one, because it's not that it's hard to do. It's hard to talk into a microphone. Do you find it hard?
Yeah, it's weird.
Like, I find it difficult. Like, I can sit here and have a conversation all day long, but when you hit record, it's like I get stupid. You know, like
Yeah.
brain fart. And I'm sure the more you do it, it'll get easier. But you've been doing this for 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah, 4 now.
Yeah, and have had some pretty good success with it. And I know back whenever I felt like God was laying this on my heart to get involved in, I mean, you're one of the first people I reached out to. It's like, hey, man, how do you do it? What are you doing? And the more I find it's probably not as complicated as I make it, unless you go like we did with USB mics and, you know, fought for an hour trying to get this started recording tonight and it's not working. But I guess the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah, it went from the first few episodes I'm trying to figure things out to I've got it ready for as soon as my guest walks in, we kind of get the icebreaker convos out of the way before we start recording.
Mm-hmm.
That way I just hit record and I'm ready to go. And then the editing process took me about 2 months to get that grip on to where now it's just like
You just go in and do it and bang it out and you're done.
Yeah.
Not spend a lot of
takes me
time.
1/10 of the time.
Yeah.
Used to take me like 2 weeks. Now it's a day.
Right. And I'm sure some of those best conversations are the ones you're not recording, right?
Oh yeah.
You get in there and that was, you know, kind of our goal tonight. So just get in here, chill out a minute, talk, catch up, and I'm sure we probably missed the meat of a lot of good conversations.
Yeah, there were some episodes where like I had my friends on that I had good memories with, where we came in and just started rolling,
Right.
and it just flowed. I'm like, you know what, our parents were gonna find out eventually anyway.
Right.
So we'll talk about it.
Right.
And you kind of got to be shameless with it, man. It's like,
Sure.
if people like it, they like it. If they don't, cool. But in a way, somebody's going to relate to it somehow, some way.
Sure. Well, I mean, you're definitely putting yourself out there. The thing I found getting older, you know, when you're a kid and you're in your dirt and you're drinking, you're smoking, you're doing whatever. Obviously, you don't want anybody to find out about it because everybody freaks out. And I remember talking to my mom probably in my 30s and just finally telling her, hey, I drank in high school and I smoked some weed and I've done some things I'm not proud of. And she's like, you think I didn't know that?
Yeah.
And I think it's funny how we think that we have that hidden from our parents and we don't. But whenever you get into something like this, I feel like the more real and even in ministry, the 20 years I've been doing ministry, I've found the more real I can be, the more it connects and the better off it is. I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm not saying that I'm proud of the things that I've done that are sinful or wrong, but I hadn't murdered anybody and I don't, you know what I mean? I'm not out selling dope and doing all the things that I guess are considered breaking the law things, but there are definitely still things in my life that I'm not proud of. But it's just funny how we think nobody before us went through what we're going through as a teenager.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's one thing I've always tried to do is just try to be probably too open, too honest at times, and sometimes it gets you in trouble, but I just remember my mom like, you think I didn't know that?
Yeah.
Like, what made you think I didn't realize that you were doing those things? I just hope and prayed that you made better decisions down the road. And here I am now with 4 kids myself, and one of them's 20, still lives at home. And it's like, I'm dumb to think if I'm a dumb human being if I think my kids aren't going to at least try something.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just human nature. Things you're going to get into and do in general.
I kept it pretty straight laced through high school because my goal was to get out of here.
Right.
And I did start dipping in my junior year, and I would always hide my skull can like right there up under my car seat.
Yeah.
And one day I got in there and it was missing. I'm like, oh, maybe I just left it on the golf cart or something. Not even thinking twice about it. I meet my dad at the golf course and he just tosses the can to me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. He
Yeah.
goes, pick a better flavor.
Right.
That's all he said to me.
Right.
Like, he was cool. Like, he knew I was a teenager.
Right.
And then when I was 19, 20, coming home on weekends and stuff from college, I tried to keep the fact I was going over to my friend's house and drinking from him. And all he said to me one day was, I can like come in there when you're passed out and smell it.
Right.
I'm not thinking like, oh yeah, they're going to reek of it.
Yeah.
Or burping it up in church the next morning.
Right. And that's one thing, like, so me and Marcus and Les, which you're tied to my aunt because she babysat you guys.
Yeah.
I remember us being teenagers and of course, we're cool and we're smoking, slipping around smoking and come in and she's like, and my mom would do it too. You been smoking? No. Why would you think that? Well, duh. You can smell it. You know what I mean? And we thought we were slick, man. I remember one time we would hide our cigarettes or whatever. And, of course, she smelled it on us. And Aunt Sue goes upstairs. And Marcus had this dresser. And up under his dresser, he would slide them up under the dresser. And all the way, I mean, like you had to stick your arm under there, She'll never find it. Man, she wasn't up there like 2 seconds. And she come beating down the stairs. Boom. Thought you weren't smoking. You know what I mean? But trivial stuff. Not that any of it matters. But it's just crazy how slick you think you are when you're young.
Oh yeah.
And then you're scared to tell anybody about it when you get older. But the thing I found with my mom is like when I began to be open and honest with her about things that I had done, she began to be open and honest with me about, hey, I've been there. I've experienced it too. I've gone through that.
Yeah.
And I know your dad, being the person that he was, you probably wouldn't have even had to hide it. You probably could have just went to him and said, hey, Dad, this is what I'm going to do. I'm sure he would have given you some sort of lecture. Be safe, be smart. But it wouldn't have been the end of the world like you're thinking it is,
The only time he ever got mad at me, and he had one rule for when I went out, was to not drive.
Right.
And I always like made sure I was with somebody that wasn't drinking that could get me home if I overindulged. And the only time he lost his crap on me, man, was one time I went out to Birmingham and all my friends left, and I was there with just 2 other people that I knew. And I drove home and had a wreck. That was the only time he laid into me.
Yeah.
Just, you're an idiot. Why
Right.
He kept me from getting arrested.
Sure.
Because luckily the cop that came, he knew.
Yeah.
He said, he's in the backseat asleep. I'm taking him home. And if it wasn't for him, that probably could have changed my entire life.
Oh, absolutely. It could have affected the outcome, and a lot of things affected you getting a job, or you could have killed somebody, killed yourself.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of things.
They said they were lucky. They were like, you're lucky you fell asleep.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened. I fell asleep. And I just rolled off into an embankment. I didn't flip. Nothing like that. I was rolled straight into it.
Right.
There's like, if he'd been awake and jerked, he would have flipped.
Yeah. So
So
it could have been a whole lot worse, for sure.
Woke up as my car was just kind of coming to a stop. I'm like, this ain't a road. I got out and did the things that happen when you get drunk, and I called my dad. I'm like, hey, you better hurry, because I'm in the ditch. Well, I'm in a holler. It's like, just call me when you get here. And my dad made it. It was a solid 7-minute drive. He was there in like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And shortly after is when the cop pulled up.
Yeah.
And they were pulling my car out and all that. It was luck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, luck, Lord, favor, call it what you want. The I don't even really know why we're on these topics, but the point being is, I mean, you had a great dad.
Yeah.
I mean, you really did. Like, and Randy, you know, was a huge part of my life, especially my teenage years, being involved in church. He was always there and a part of the youth group and things like that. And I know at one point my sister lived with you guys and stuff. And so you guys have been a huge part of our family for a long time. And yeah, I mean, that's one thing that I could always say about your dad. Even for me not being his kid, like if I needed him, he was there.
Yeah.
100%. Didn't matter. You know what I mean? If he liked you, he liked you. And
If he didn't.
if he didn't, you knew it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you would know it. But just a good person. Chris, did you find anything? Did you ever get anything as a teenager? So I met you. You were what, 14?
Yeah.
About 14 when you started coming to youth group.
I remember when Chris came to church with us.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, you had hair back then. So did
Yeah.
I. You know, well, I didn't have a lot. I had a little bit more.
I had a
What
lot.
got
I had a
now.
lot.
You had a
more
lot
than-
of hair,
I had a
like-
lot more than I have now.
Yeah, like you had good hair. Like I never thought that you would end up losing it.
There's a few rooms I sit in now where I have the most hair.
Right? Which is pretty amazing because your
welcome-
dad had none. You know.
Welcome
Yeah.
to the show, Jake.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
right.
still holding tight, but
Yeah, hanging on. Cantley still got good hair too, you know. So obviously y'all took that from your mom's side. So
Yeah.
you know, good for you. Did you find yourself in any kind of dirt that your mom and dad maybe did or didn't know about?
So like, not really. My parents were kind of like really laid back and pretty cool about stuff. But I mean, it was kind of funny. One weekend they were going off and they were like, "Hey, you're gonna have the house to yourself," and they were like, "We're going gambling." That's what they like to do. So,
Right.
so they go off for the weekend. Well, of course, I'm gonna have a little party and have like 5 or 6 of my friends that are guys over. We're like 15 at the time, so they all come over and we all get beer and everything. Well, I didn't say nothing. Then my dad comes
Hang
back.
on, hold that thought. Like I'm extremely disappointed in you
Why?
because I'm your youth pastor and you're drinking beer.
Oh
I
yeah,
never
that's
knew this.
that's true. I didn't think
I
about
never
that.
knew
So
this,
listen,
so-
all right. So that's true. So anyway, so they get back on like Sunday afternoon, and my dad's like, "Well, how'd the party go?" And I was like, "Well, I didn't say anything about a party." He was like, "Oh, I know you had a party." He's like, "Did you have fun?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Cool," and that was it. Like
Yeah.
that was the whole conversation. So
Well, yeah, I mean, and your mom is passed now, but I
Yeah.
mean, I remember them always being extremely supportive of you and anything you ever wanted to do,
Yeah.
and then extremely supportive of Candace and I as far as youth pastors go.
Yeah, they
Like,
were.
I could take Chris anywhere I wanted, and I could have done the same with you. Probably did do the same with you at
Yeah.
times, you know. But I think that's huge, especially for me. You know, I didn't have a dad growing up. I had a stepdad. He was a jerk. I thought my name was MF and SOB. You know, and slapped me around, whatever. But he took care of us. You know, he fed me, clothed me, and things like that. But my mom did an absolutely phenomenal job, I feel like. And I try to be the same way with my kids. It's like I'm not dumb enough to think that you're not going to get into junk, but there's 2 people you can get. You can get Dad or you can get Wes. And if you need Wes, then you say, "Hey, Dad, I need Wes right now," and we'll make that happen. Now tomorrow morning, you're fine, you're hungover, I'm probably going to be beating on your door and stomping around the house and, cooking greasy stuff to make you sick. You know what I mean? And then we're going to have a talk. But I've always tried to make it to where I'm going to be as, same with, I mean, like I was in youth
Yeah.
group. I'm going to be as real with my kids as I can be. Not lie to them, tell them the truth, not fudge anything. But also be as open with them. Hey, you can talk to me about anything, no judgment, no repercussions. Obviously, I mean, there's repercussions for everything, but we can have a one-on-one adult conversation with you being a child and figure it out, and I know 100% I attribute some of that to your dad, watching your dad with you guys growing up and then how he was with us. And he was always one of those people that I just know that if I needed him, I could call him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and when I did, if I ever did call him or if I ever saw him out, it was just like it was the last time I saw him, and it's funny now being, I guess, his age when I was a teenager or he's probably a little younger than I am now. But it's funny just seeing you guys and me being the old guy,
Yeah.
and I always remember like never bothered me hanging out with Randy, like, and Lisa, like they were always fun and stuff like that. But as a younger kid, I always thought in my mind, it's like, man, they are so old. You know what I mean? Like we have nothing in common. They are so old. And now that I'm old, I find even at work, like we got a fairly young crew and, I hang out with most of the 20 to 30-year-old guys. I don't hang out with the guys who are my age or older. And it's like, what do I really have in common with these people? But I have more in common with them than I do people my own age most times,
So that's we have a little one that lives with us, and he and I are the same age gap as Dad and I were.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly, like, I figured out that they're learning this crap as they go, just like we are.
Absolutely.
Because I'm like, some of the things he does, I'm like, I can remember why my dad would just stand there and look at me sometimes like, what are you doing?
Right.
And trying to figure me out as a person.
Right.
And I find myself in those shoes now, and it blows my mind.
Yeah. And it's funny.
No wonder I threw through a loop so many times.
Right. And it's funny as a parent, Chris, you got 2 kids. I'm sure you feel the same way. It's like I'm having to provide and protect. And I don't even know how to provide and protect for myself. You know what I mean? But I'm having to do these for people who can't take care of themselves, and, growing up, I remember looking at my uncles and things like that and never being worried about where we were or what was happening, what was going down. And now being their age with young kids, it's like they had to be scared out of their mind, just like I am, head on a swivel. Not that I'm worried about, anything happening, but I know it's my responsibility. You know what I mean? I know when we're out and about, I've got to take care of them. I got to keep them safe, and not really knowing what that means. You know what I mean? Like still at 45 years old, I have no clue.
Yeah. I mean, that's like with us, with our kids, like when they were younger and they wanted to go spend the night somewhere or go do something, like we never had a problem with it. We're like, yeah, go, date night, awesome, But now as they get older, it's like we're having more anxious thoughts about them going off now. And it's weird because they're older. You would think it would be when they were babies, younger, but it wasn't. It's now. And now I'm like, well, I kind of want them to stay home. Like, I want to be able to see them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what they're doing.
I find when they're young, the main thing you're having to worry about is somebody else doing something to them. As they get older, they're kind of responsible for themselves. And I mean, your youngest son your son's how old?
6. Yeah.
6. So, I have no qualms him going outside and riding his bike or whatever here. He'd probably be safe, but he's at an age where he could be off in the woods or he could be out in the road or before you know it, you know what I mean? So I think that's why as they get older, you worry a little more because you are watching them constantly when they're younger, but as they get older, it's...
Yeah, well, that's like they were out of school today, and so my dad was like, hey, just let him spend the night. And so last night, Carson stayed with my dad. Well, today, my dad got his dirt bike out for him, got it running, and he ran it right in the back of a truck. So, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean...
It's a good learning lesson.
It is, yeah. You let go of the throttle.
Yeah,
is the thing, so...
Yeah. So, talking about dads, your dad passed away when?
January of 23.
Of 23, and your mom passed?
July 17.
July of 17. So, let's talk about that a little bit. So, your mom suffered from lupus, right?
Yeah, systemic lupus.
Right. So, what ultimately ended up happening? Just, I know that's an autoimmune thing, and
she had developed pneumonia pretty severely.
Right.
To the point where they had put her on a vent. And it was kind of like a roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
Like she was off the vent, back on it, off, back on it. It went on for like 3 weeks. Brittany and I just moved to our new house.
Y'all hadn't been married long.
Hardly, a little over a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we bought a house. We had first July the 4th party at our house, because we had a pretty much farm.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, we can shoot fireworks here and nobody's going to have any qualms with it. And like 2 days later, she went to the hospital, and I knew she didn't look good when she came. She was struggling to get around, couldn't breathe right. And so that's when the vent journey started. And then I was cutting grass because I was having some friends over for my birthday. And Dad texted me like, they bought Mom down to 25% on the vent. I'm like, I'm just sitting on a lawnmower and I start crying, like, thanking God, like, thanks.
And you being in the profession you're in, you understand what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next day, he was like, they kind of had to bump her up a little bit, but, they say if she comes off of it, she'll have to come home on oxygen or whatever. So they were still talking about everything being okay. And it was like, overnight, things changed. And they're like, her respiratory system is completely failed. She's never going to be able to breathe on her own. She's going to have to remain on a vent, sedated, whatever. And that's when my dad had to make that decision. And that's when my anger started.
Sure.
And we went to the hospital and stayed with her until she took her last breath. And that kind of started my decline personally.
Right.
Because, I'd seen my grandmother and my mom's dad die. And
well, at 30 years old, you shouldn't be losing your parents at 30 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's what I think what made me mad is I was like, we'll go into a little more here in just a little bit.
Yeah.
But my parents and I had a rocky relationship for a very long time before I got married. So from the time I got married and stuff, it was like I was just kind of getting to know them again.
Yeah.
And when Mom died, it was back to just drinking my sorrows away, just kind of living on cruise control. Like I was letting it affect my marriage. I went through a depression, got up to 260 pounds.
Right.
Like, I hated life. Like, I was sitting there. We had a window that had a view of the entire farm. And it's just open, beautiful land, man. Like, and I was just sitting there. I was like, if I ended it today, I would be totally cool.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be here anymore.
Right.
I was like, I was self-destructive. I was destroying my marriage. I was destroying all my friendships. I was destroying myself because it was come home from work, 2 double bourbons, go to bed, wake up, do the same thing. And I felt like trash. And 2020 rolled around, and Brittany and I were on vacation, and Dad called me. He's like, hey, I've got to go to get some scans done. I was like, great. And he called me not too long after. He was like, I have stage 4 cancer. And that wrecked me. But I remember sitting there, I was in this fancy resort in Florida. And I was like, I can either worry about it now and not enjoy this time with my wife, or I can just buckle down and deal with it when I get home. And that's what I chose to do. And he had surgery not too long after to remove the tumor that had grown. It was a rare tumor. It was one in every million people.
Sure.
Like 1 in a million chance that
he
tumor
got it,
develops. Right. And we thought it was just a hernia. And that's why he let it go for so long. He's like, I've had hernias multiple times.
Right.
He's like, just don't feel like getting it fixed. I want to play golf. I want to spend time with you guys and stuff. And, he started chemo and everything. And he did fine for a while. And then he ended up having to move in with my brother. And they gave him they started trying some new chemo because the rest of it wasn't really like slowing the growth. It had grown into his rib cage and all that. And that chemo just more or less killed his legs. He couldn't get up, move around, everything like that. And I was at work. My brother called me. He's like, Dad just died. And I was like, I'd just seen him 2 days before and he was doing okay.
Yeah.
It was like the body just stopped.
Yeah.
And I didn't when I was sitting there in his room, I got to where I talked to my dad like I do anybody else. And I'm just thinking, man, just why the F did you have to do this so sudden? And every time on a golf course or if I had a situation in life, my dad would always just, what are you made of?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like I could still hear his voice, almost like he was talking to me laying right there. And at that time, he had expressed multiple times, you know, kind of wish he'd back off the drinking, stuff like that. And I was just like, let's see what I'm made of. And I remember how I let mom's death turn me into the monster that I was.
Sure.
Being mad at God, being mad at anybody and everybody around me. Like almost blaming her death on anything I could.
Mm-hmm.
Using it as a crutch and excuse. And I said, I'm just going to let my dad die and be the reason I pretty much make a comeback. Be back to normal. And I was like, I'm not going to let this break me.
Right.
And I have the best wife ever. I'm trying not to cry.
No, you're good, man.
I have the best wife ever because
Sure.
she was there with me the whole time. And she could have left me.
Yeah.
She should have left me.
Sure.
And I have my dad's temper. So you know how that goes.
Yeah.
I get mad. Everybody goes, oh, no, I'm mad. And it still
It's
comes
like me.
out.
If I'm mad, everybody knows it. Like I can't hide it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I'm not going to hide it. I should, but
Might
you
as well
know
just
it.
write it on
It's
my
on my
forehead.
face. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so at that time, I said, I'm not going to let this break me. I refuse to. I'd been in a good spot with my dad when he died. Thankfully, like I said, I felt like I was just getting to know him.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, I could have felt robbed. But I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not.
Right.
And so I said, what are you made of? And I ask myself that every single day that I wake up. What am I made of? And I hung up drinking, been sober for close to a year now. Living in the gym.
Yeah.
Like if I have a bad day, like I don't sit and mope. I go
Right.
pick things up
Yeah.
and make my body tired. That way my mind stays fresh.
Mm-hmm.
And every day though, I was just like, I wish he could be here.
Right.
Because my mom and I were close. Like my mom was the one I went to talk to.
Sure.
But my dad, he was the one I knew, like, when I'm broken,
Yeah.
he's going to pick me up.
Well, and I would say that, like, watching y'all grow up, your brother seemed to more your mom. You always seemed to more your dad. And I know that's not saying, like, y'all didn't all have relationships with each other, but
I attribute a lot, like, to everything that I've got going on now. I started doing it to try to show my dad, give him something to be proud of.
sure.
And give myself something to be proud of because I wasn't very proud of myself when I started anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me interject right here. Knowing your dad, well, I mean, by doing so, giving him something to be proud of, you know, but he was proud of you and your brother. So don't ever forget that. Don't ever think he wasn't. You know what I mean? It was evident that Randy loved his boys. You know what I mean? And same with Lisa. You know what I mean? So don't ever let, I'm not saying what you did is irrelevant because that's a huge thing. You're doing it for your dad. And I know you're probably thinking, I wished I had done it while he was alive, you know, but there's so many things in your life, just you being you, that he was proud of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And same with your brother, you know.
and I know even when we had a fractured relationship, there were still things I would do that he's like, that's my boy.
Right.
But he didn't like some of the things I did
Sure.
in church. He didn't like it. He didn't like any things I did in life altogether. But when I met Brittany, that was like the thing. We're like, okay, got you a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Don't screw that up.
Right.
I'll try.
Yeah.
I'm doing so good so far. But that's kind of when we started kind of repairing things because I didn't like some of the things my parents did either.
Sure.
You know, it's normal.
Yeah.
Like, and I offended them when they did something I didn't like one day. I mean, I remember us having it out in the living room, just all three of us yelling match. And I thought I was a big boy, 21, 22 years old. I can talk how I want to, not realizing there's a 6'2", 300-pound man right here across from me. And I flat out told him, I was like, my goal in life is to be better than you. And that's when it broke. And that's when Dad was like, you can sleep here. I don't want anything. We don't, it's fine. And looking back on it, I may have been right as far as my parents should have wanted me to do better than they did.
Right.
And I shouldn't have thrown it in their face like that. And I held on to that for a long time.
Yeah. Well, being a dad, I obviously want my kids to be better than me. You know what I'm saying? Like, my wife is a huge, all credit to her. You know what I mean? Because if she wasn't here, we'd fall apart. I would. You know what I mean? That's a statement that we all know, that your dad knows. But I'm sure it was a gut-wrenching gut punch of him hearing his son basically saying, hey, you're a failure. Yeah. I want to be better than you. Not, hey, Dad, you did a good job. I'm going to take what you've taught me and apply it and make it better. Yeah. It's, I'm going to be better than you.
Yeah. Looking back, it was more of, if I would have had the better talk with him, like, I don't want to carry the burdens that you carry.
Right.
I've seen some things be done the wrong way that I can improve on.
Sure.
Instead of, I'm going to be better than you. I was a high-headed 22-year-old.
Sure.
Thinking I'm about to graduate college and you can't tell me nothing because you didn't.
Right.
Like, I was just mad.
Right.
And I know you don't like, you said we didn't have to be like related to church the whole time, but a lot of our issues stem from that because I got in with some of the, looking back, wrong people. Mm-hmm. Where I kind of carried that holier than thou attitude.
Sure.
And I thought I had big boy bridges on when in reality I was just a douchebag.
Yeah. And
I regret that time because that cost me 4 years of my parents.
Yeah.
Lord, I know that I'd only have a year with my mom after that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was intense and I still learned and grew from it. But at the same time, I sat there and I was like, I should have just listened to my dad.
Yeah.
Because I should have.
Right.
And I wouldn't have ever ended up in that position. Yeah. Because he was right.
Sure. And
he's sitting up there laughing about it right now.
Right.
I freaking told you so.
I'm the same thing with, my oldest son's 20 and it's like, hey, I see the things that you're doing. Not that you're doing anything wrong, but I see the things that you're doing. And I know that within 3, 4, 5 years, you're probably going to grow out of that. But there's going to be a lot of hurt in those 3, 4, 5 years. You know what I mean? And, I was the same way. I gave my life to Christ at 18 years old. And when I did, you couldn't tell me nothing because God had called me. You know what I mean? Like, the night I got saved is a miraculous story within itself. It without just diving into it because it's not the me show here, but, at that moment, like, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, like, I'd gone to church my whole life and I knew who Christ was. And I got, gave my life to Christ when I was 8 and got baptized and all that stuff. But, I committed that night, and at that point I was going to do it my way. And I'm still that way to a degree, but it blows my mind that anybody has ever listened to me. You know what I mean? Because I look back at, when I took over as youth pastor, I was 25 years old and, I'm going to look the way I want to look. I'm going to dress the way I want to dress. I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And if you don't like it, I don't care. But that caused me so much hurt that I put on myself. And part of it for me is that it's not that I really worry about what everybody thinks, but I don't ever want anybody not to like me, even though I am a super douche. You know what I mean? Like, and it's not that I'm trying to be a douche. I'm just sarcastic and I don't know where the line is. If I see the line, I'm going to cross it, to make you laugh or whatever. But there are times that I've been really hot-headed too. And it's like, how did I not screw up so many people? And maybe I did, in 10 years of full-time youth ministry, it's like, why did anybody keep coming to my youth group? Because I remember, kids talking in the youth group and I'd call them out, come up here and grab my belt loop. We fixing to walk and talk until you learn to shut up. And it's like, that is such a jerk thing to do. And maybe y'all can speak because y'all are in it, but maybe y'all just knew my heart and knew that I loved you. and hey, I expect you to do things differently. Probably the same way with your dad, you know. I expect you to do things different, and if you're not, then hey, this is the repercussions of it. But it's like, how embarrassing is that? You know what I mean? To stand up in front of a room full of 30, 40 kids, and it's hard for me right here. I'm slinging my hands everywhere. I walk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the whole time I'm preaching or teaching, I'm walking, and they've got my belt loop. But it didn't take many times. There wasn't many people that did that. You know what I mean? Like, they learned to be quiet. But yeah, I mean, I think we all have those moments, especially when we're young. You know, you're becoming a man. You know what I mean? Like, you're going from being taught everything by your parents to all of a sudden, I'm about to have to figure it out. And I hope I learned as much from them as they tried to instill in me. Yeah. Does that make sense? And there's a lot of things that come into play in that moment because you're trying to be your own person, you know? And I think if you could have that conversation with your dad today, he might sit back and say, yeah, you were a turd, but I know you had to go through it. And he probably went through it himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At some point, you know.
Well, that was one of the good qualities. Like, he doesn't like to see the bad in people. He wanted to see the good in them. And he kept trying to convince himself and me that it wasn't me that was projecting those things. It was the people I was around.
Right.
Mm-hmm. The people feeding my mind.
Right.
And he was right because, like I said, I got in with the wrong people.
And you're saying that was in church.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I'm not bagging on church because I think church is a great thing. But there are churches out there that they're just jacked up, but they're full of people. You know what I mean? People are screwed up, but we expect the church because of who Jesus was and you know, the way he taught, we expect all Christians or all people in church to be Christians. And most of the time people are going to church just to tick a box. I went to church today and I feel better about myself, and I'm going to go home and watch the Super Bowl or you know, whatever games on TV, and I'm going to drink my beer and, you know, do whatever. And
yeah, I mean, so like when my mom died, I kind of went through the same thing Drake did. So I was real angry with God because I didn't lose just my mom. I ended up losing 10 family members in 2 years. And it was like my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles. So it was like immediate family, not like, you know, my cousin that's twice removed on my father's side or something crazy. And so like I got real angry. So like I was going through that binge drinking problem too. And it was all the people we were hanging out with. So like I didn't necessarily go buy alcohol every day and bring it home. But if it was on the weekend and people had it, I wasn't going to stop.
right.
You know, and it got to the point to where like I honestly, like I was driving my boat drunk with everybody on the boat. Like it had gotten bad. Like me and Alicia were like, we were so close to just calling it quits and going separate ways.
That's so funny. I never knew that.
Yeah. Well,
so
I mean, there's a lot, but that's one of them. And so, yeah, it took me a long time to get out of like whatever funk I guess I was in.
Right.
Because I was angry. I mean, I was mad.
Sure. And that's the thing, man, that I guess we fail to realize is, you know, life's going to happen. It's going to. We know everybody's going to die. We know that. But when it happens, you're not prepared for it. You know what I mean? Like, and fortunately for me, you know, I've lost my grandmother. You know, Les died, and we were, you know, early 30s, and I have a lot of regrets about that because, you know, he had a problem. He was struggling. Some addiction issues, because of an accident and made some bad decisions. And, you know, he made a lot of bad decisions. We all did. But, you know, the last conversation I had with him was like, hey, look, when you're ready to quit this crap, you can call me. But until then, I'm done. Don't call me. Don't have nothing to do with me. And then fast forward a few years, I go through something in my personal life, and I find myself just so depressed. You know what I mean? And still struggling about it. I'm seeing a therapist now. You know what I mean? But just can't see the forest for the trees, and I'm super blessed. You know what I mean? Like, my wife is a smoke show. Like, I mean, I know I'm good looking, but you know, like, she's a smoke show. Like, I don't know, you know, in the 20 years we've been married, I've had women, I guess, hit on me, but or maybe not hit on me, flirt with me. And I'm not a good looking guy. Like, I'm not. I've had them flirt with me, but like she's had men full on make passes at her, and I get it. I do, you know. So, I feel extremely blessed that God gave her to me, you know. And I know y'all feel the same way about your wives, but like, it's a wonder I just hadn't screwed it up just by my way of thinking, you know. And it's just funny how life, it doesn't take much. It's just, losing a parent is pretty tragic, but very tragic, not pretty tragic, very tragic, but it could be anything you're passionate about, anything you care about, your job, or, you like to play golf. All of a sudden you can't swing a golf club anymore. Has nothing to do with anything in your life other than you enjoying it, but it could throw you way out yonder. You know what I mean?
You better take me that day.
Right.
So I try to stay focused and keep everything around me healthy, and it got tiresome.
Yeah.
And, even though I decided to man up after he died, looking back, I was like, I did a lot of growing up in those 2.5 years that he had cancer.
Yeah.
Like realizing like he's just dropping little nuggets in here, and I'm not really realizing it at the moment.
Yeah.
I look back, I'm like, man, he was getting me ready.
Right.
Because now, like, I'm still not perfect. I'm not the best husband I should be. But I still try.
Sure.
And I try to be the person he saw that I hadn't yet. And that's the hardest thing to do, is see somebody in yourself that somebody else sees in you.
Right.
It does add a lot of weight, but now I can carry that weight a little bit better.
Right.
My marriage is past year has been better than it's ever been.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's good to hear. Good to know.
And we still have our little...
Sure. I mean, it's marriage, man. It's marriage.
She's my little BA.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't tell her that. But
yeah.
She's tough. I mean, to be there for me the way she was.
Sure.
Because I was unbearable, I'm sure.
Yeah.
She ain't told me that, but she probably thought.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for Chris, but I worry every day. It's like, why is she with me? You know what I mean? Like, she's way better than me than I am to her.
It's like landing them's the easy part, keeping them's the hard part.
Right. And, well, you say that, but they're staying. And we're doing minimal effort when we should be doing maximum effort, you know? That's the hard thing, is like trying to figure out how to do it the right way. And then me personally, I get discouraged and just stop trying, you know? And that's with everything in life. And that it sucks. It's something I pray about every single day. And, in preparing for this podcast and doing it, I was asking God, what do we call it? What do we, it's not a Christian podcast, but it's Christians doing a podcast. And I want to give people a chance to share their stories and things like that. And it's like, God, what I call it? And so I settled on the name Among the Ashes and talked to Chris about it. And, God took me to the story of Job, which y'all know this, but I'm going to share it. But it says, Job was sitting on his ash heap and scraping his sores, and all these people kept coming by, and they're just telling him what he did wrong. I mean, like, bro, you think? Yeah, it's funny to me. I have people tell me all the time, well, have you prayed about it? That's the one thing I hadn't done.
Yeah. It's kind of like saying turn the computer off and back on.
Yeah. Go read your Bible. Oh, you know what? I didn't think of that. You know? And as I read on in the story of Job petitioned God 38 times before God spoke to him. And when God spoke to him, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, you can read it, Job chapter 38. He says, where were you when I made this earth? Where were you when I created you? Matter of fact, I did it all by myself, and it's good. So if I can handle that, do you not think I can handle what you're going through? I mean, that's pretty much it, And here I find myself constantly trying to fix something. And sometimes it's just God says, hey, I got you. Yeah. You're right where I want you. It sucks. I know it. And I, I pray all the time, and it's like God tells me, you'll understand when it's over. No, I want to understand now. But if I understand it right now, I'm going to try to fix it, and I'm going to screw it up even further. You know what I mean? And I think that's, I can get a counseling with Wes here. I'm not a licensed counselor, by the way. Don't take my advice. But through the tragedy that both of you have gone through, losing your parents, it's helped shape and form you into something better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you were talking about how God's got you, you know, or he's there for you. So I've been trying to make a habit of writing my wife a letter every morning before I go to work. So I do that, and I've been doing that for, I don't know, probably 3 months or so now. But the thing is my wife gets overwhelmed real easy a lot. So like my big saying for her now is God's got this, and then I try to put that on there somewhere just so she knows like, hey, I'm gonna make it today, like it's gonna be fine, because she gets overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it in a nutshell. It's like we can't fix it, we can't change it. It's gonna happen. You know, I mean, death. That's just because we're on that topic. Death is gonna happen. Why are we never prepared for it? You know what I'm saying? Because we all think we're going to live to be 80, 90, 100 years old, and our parents are too. And we're going to have a long life with them and our kids. And, you know, the most tragic thing to me is a parent burying a child. Like that's horrible.
Yeah.
Like that should never happen.
Right.
When we can get to the point to where we're just content, you know, I'm here. I'm not happy, but I'm not sad. You know, I'm not angry. I'm content, and I'm going to take what life throws at me, and I'm going to say, who am I?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Who am I today?
That's the way I am. I think I throw people through a loop when they're like, hey, how are you doing? Like they expect something to be wrong with me. And I'm like, I'm doing better than I've been in a very long time.
Yeah.
They're like almost in shock, like how? Why?
Yeah.
Just see every day as a new opportunity to be better.
Sure.
Like, you know, that's a cliche saying to, you know, live by, but I'm like,
but it's truth.
Yeah, when I wake up every day, I was like, what can I do better to be a better husband, a better friend?
Yeah.
Because I became that overbearing person, whether it was through anger or needing something or somebody, and now it's like I have no problem figuring it out on my own when the situation calls for it. And my therapist, he told me, he's like, you need to stop trying to do everything by yourself.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I've got a good support system around me. But I stopped dwelling on those things that happened to me.
Yeah.
I look at it as it happened. It sucked. I dealt with it. But I can't let that define me anymore.
Sure.
And I let my dad dying define who I am now.
Sure.
But it's not a negative defining me like it was with my mom.
Right.
I let my mom's death, like I said, turn me into a mess.
Right.
Let my dad's death turn me into more or less a good monster.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I'm obsessed with anything I set my mind to. I'm diagnosed with OCD, so it's like I get at that thought, just gotta.
Right.
That's what I'm dwelling on.
Well, you're not young Mike Tyson fighting for the championship,
No.
going to prison. You are now Mike Tyson, who's fixing to beat the brakes off this Paul guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the beast is there, but you know how to control it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's key. It's one thing that I've started doing in seeing my therapist, and it's taken about a year. Like I said, my life is great. Like if outside looking in, it's like, what's he got to be depressed about? But there's days I wake up and it's like a fog just rolls in, and I mean, I want to cry, but I can't. Like there's just no emotion, you know? And that's one thing he said to me. He's like, you got to stop doing it on your own. And you got to stop worrying about things that you can't fix. Stop worrying about what happened way back then, because, and one thing I always knew, but one thing that he helped me see, I guess, is my trauma, I guess that's put me, I mean, there's a lifetime of trauma there, but what really broke me was as much my fault as it was somebody else's. Yeah. You know what I mean? I could have handled it, and I'm not going to rehash it, but I could have handled it totally differently. And even though everything's good now, I still think about that. I still have the animosity and the feelings of how I felt in that moment. And that's and it's just, I don't know. It's made me somebody that I'm not, number one. But I've had to, and I've done this for years. I wake up every day, I look in the mirror and I say, hey, you're good enough. You know, you are good enough. The other way, if nobody else tells me that day, at least I've heard it. But now I'm starting to believe it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I can do what I want to do. You know, I can achieve what I want to achieve. You know,
It's like after Mom died, like I said, when I went that dark place, like I'm sitting around like looking like, why do I deserve that to happen to me? And next thing you know is, why do I deserve this? Why do I deserve that? And it was a lot of self-doubt.
yeah,
And now it's, instead of wondering why I deserve it, first off, I thank God every day He didn't take it away from me when I was ungrateful,
sure,
because He could have.
sure,
Everything I had, because I was ungrateful.
sure,
I was almost like I would go out of my way to destroy things.
yeah.
And now it's the grace He showed me. I'm like,
Man, I sat in my truck and I know exactly what you're saying. Like, there's no reason that I shouldn't be in a gutter somewhere. But just for the way that I've treated God, I sat in my truck one day, so upset and mad. And I said, you know what, God? F you. I am done. I hate you. You've done nothing but, you know, the whole time I was doing what you wanted me to do, or what I, you know, felt like you wanted me to do, it brought me nothing but heartache. And then here I am trying to move forward into what you want me to do, and it's still heartache. What's the point? You know, what's the point? I'm done with you. And I felt the Holy Spirit just say, okay, which made me mad, you know, like, okay. And then
He gave you the K too.
you're saying,
Yeah, the K
okay,
too.
like I just said, F you, I hate you, God. Like, I'm borderline blasphemy here. You know what I'm saying? Like, and really when I said it, I was expecting just to be dead and wake up in hell. You know what I mean? And to feel the Holy Spirit say, okay. And then God began to speak to me, and He said, when you're ready, you know what I mean? I got you, but when you're ready, you know, and it's made me think a lot about my children. My children could say that to me, and it probably pissed me off. You know what I'm saying? But I'm still going to love them.
Yeah.
I'm still going to help them. I'm still going to show them the right way. And, you know, I was praying about a situation. I said, God, if you would just fix it. And, I hear the Holy Spirit say, and then confirm through a video a few days later, I didn't put you in it, but I'll walk with you, and I'll keep you from getting hurt more. I'll keep you from screwing it up further. I didn't put you in it, but I can show you how to get out of it, you know? And that's the thing. We expect God to be, I say this all the time, a genie in a bottle, you know, grant my 3 wishes. And the church, I feel like at times fails us in that, because, you know, we're taught to ask, pray, and believe. The Bible says that, you know, whatever you believe in Jesus' name, you'll have. But it doesn't necessarily work in that way. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that goes into play. And I'm not saying that you have to buy God's love or buy Jesus's love, but, you know, obedience and sacrifice and serving Him all come into play in a lot of things. But even when you're not, He's still there. You know what I mean? And He's saying, okay, when you're ready, I'll throw the ball.
Yeah. I mean, God was blessing us, even though I was in that dark place. And like, I didn't even realize I was in a dark place.
Yeah.
Like, it was so smooth transition that I didn't even realize I was angry. Like, it took me forever. And then, like, finally one day, it's like, I just started boohooing, talking to Alicia. I was just like, I figured it out. Like, I know what's going on, you know, like, but it took forever.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. I had no idea.
Well, and that's the weird thing for me. It's like, I know where I'm at. Like, I don't go to church much. I mean, just being transparent, I don't. It's not that I don't want to go. It's not that I have anything against, like, Chris and I go to a great church. Like, our pastor is amazing. Our associate pastor, went to high school with him, great guy. Everybody there is great. As a matter of fact, like, if I don't go for a year and I walk in, it's not, well, hey, where have you been? It's, hey man, how you doing? It's one of those things that, for me, it's like, I don't understand my hang up with church, but like, I can't go. You know what I mean? Like, I have Saturday nights, I have every intent of going. And when Sunday morning rolls around, it's like, or, you know, I'm battling, I've had gout really bad, or my back will go out. It's like Satan will either prevent me from going, or I'm not going because I'm mad or I'm fed up or whatever, you know. And I know I've missed out on a lot by doing so, but the thing but the one thing people, I guess, fail to realize is even though I wasn't going to church it does look like that my relationship with God is dwindling. And this is not advice. I'm not saying to stop going to church, but it looked like to everybody that my relationship with God was dwindling. But what happened was I stopped being religious. You know what I mean? Like, I stopped looking at everybody's sins and just started seeing people for people. And I may not agree with what you're doing, but I love you, you know? And it goes back to the conversation a while ago of why did anybody ever listen to me? Because I was very religious, you know? You had to think the way I thought. You had to do it the way I did it. And I honestly, and I do go to church sometimes, but in my absence of not going to church, like, I found God because I had to.
Yeah.
I no longer had anybody feeding it to me. And I guess my advice to anybody in that is, number one, don't stop going to church, but start feeding yourself. Don't let your pastor be the only person that's feeding you, or your Sunday school teacher or whatever, because he may be reading you a telephone book and you think it's of God, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not. And I know there's a lot of good ministers out there, a lot of good pastors. I'm not bagging on church or ministers, but I think at some point God's telling us, hey, you got to do this yourself. You know, I'm with you, but you got to do it yourself. Pull your bootstraps up, move forward, you know.
It's like, I felt like, I mean, you know how it was. We were there every time
Yeah.
the doors were open.
Yeah.
Even on days after school, I have to go over there.
Right.
And I left the church after I graduated high school because I was like, I just kind of
want to figure it out.
Yeah. And I started going back, got saved, started going to school to be a youth pastor, started working with the youth, and it kind of set me on the road that I'm on now. Was I got to preach one, or I was supposed to preach one night, and it was one of those moments where it was like, no, we're praying tonight. Somebody in here needs it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you just, you know,
Yeah, the Holy Spirit.
discernment.
Yeah, he's telling you.
And after the altar service was over, like, I just told the band, I was like, hey, you know what? Y'all keep playing. If you need something, just come on up here. We'll pray with you and all that. And after the service, we had gotten a new youth pastor. My mentor had left to take a head pastor job. So I was already kind of in an iffy spot. And they walked up to me when I was leaving. I was like, if you didn't have anything, you could have just told me. And I was like, I opened my notebook and I was like, if you want the sermon, here it is.
Yeah.
Here's my notes. If you want me to give you the sermon, I will. Like, no, I'm good. Just didn't know if you're prepared or not. And I'm sitting here like, first off, I wasn't come prepared.
If you don't trust me, why would you even say, hey,
Exactly.
in the first place?
Yeah.
You know?
Like, I'm here. I got to drive back to Cleveland tonight.
Yeah.
Why would you? I came out of my way, bro.
Right.
And that's when I text Dad. He's like, hey, everything go? I'm not even going to mention.
Sure.
Pastor's
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
Like, what happened? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I just had to talk with so-and-so, and they told me this, this, and this. I was like, I don't know, but I'm not coming back. I was like, I'll stay here in Cleveland, bro. And I did. I started going to church with a church that two people I was extremely close to were preaching at up there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I was lucky to have somebody like that up there.
Right.
So I started hanging around there, and then I got an opportunity to do something that was related to a different part of my degree with public relations. I came home and started that Wild Street. I was like, just not even going to church anymore.
Right.
Like, you're in the rearview mirror, God.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave you there.
And I've had those moments, you know what I mean?
And then when Mom died, it got even worse.
Right.
But, you know, after Brittany and I got married, you know, you got us to write the things we love
Why you
about
love
each
them.
other
Yep.
on a piece of paper.
Did y'all do that? Did I make y'all do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And mine's still in my wallet.
It should be.
I don't know where mine's at.
Way to go, Chris.
But we, you know, we were trying to make God the center of our relationship, and it almost got to the point where I felt like we were trying to force that
Yeah.
instead of just showing it to each other.
Yeah.
Like, we would sit down and read. We got this couple's Bible that had Bible verses and have questions you would ask each other. And I was like, I almost feel like we're trying to force this. And we were trying to go to church, and then I started working Sundays, and I was like, second time I dozed off in church, I was like, I can't do it
Yeah.
anymore. And I haven't been to church since, and that's 7 years.
Yeah.
But after Mom died, I was kind of in the wilderness, just borderline agnostic. Like, you don't even exist
Yeah.
to me. And I go back to those times where I look at that and think, if I was still there, where would I be now?
Right.
Yeah, I had a podcast related to alcohol, but that was still just a positive mental thing for me.
Right.
Like, I just made it like a Southern community related name, but I took it to heart at the same time.
Yeah.
But when Dad died, I started doing a daily devotion or just praying, because I'm sitting there, I'm like, dude, that was food for my soul. And I remember that. Like, even when I didn't want to be at church, I would pray or listen to a song.
Right.
Or just listen to a sermon from somebody, and like, I was like, kind of get back into that. So now I find one thing to do a day. I'm like, if I can just pause for 5-10 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Or listen to something for 5 to 10 minutes a day. Like, I'm feeding my soul. And ever since I have, I'm in a far better place.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't project it like I used to. Like, when I was in youth ministry, my constant Facebook status.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, I look back at my memories, I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I was spouting off a bunch of bull crap.
Right.
Just
not
trying
even leaving what I'm telling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it. And now it's like, if I can just talk to God and myself
Yeah.
and incorporate it into my marriage and show that, then I don't have to force we're going to make God the center of our universe.
Well, and I don't have a problem. I think every couple and every individual should have that time with God. You know what I mean? Like, where you sit down and you do read, you do pray together, things like that. But when you're married, it's crazy because, you've seen everything about that person. You know what I mean? They've seen everything about you. But reading the Bible and praying together are two of the hardest things that and podcast, some of the hardest things I've ever tried to do. But the thing I found is when I just let it be organic, and nothing wrong with having structured time doing that, but the moments where I've just spontaneously done it, I see she and I grow together. Now it's been a long time since that's happened, and that's on me, but it's kind of the same way with my walk with God. When I was trying to force him, and it goes back to that scripture in Job, when I'm trying to force him to show me something, I know I know nobody, I don't know, I'm not saying, maybe people understand it. I feel like people don't. You may feel like I'm far from God, but God is telling me, I got you. Because I still pray, I still read. The hardest thing I've tried to convey to people is that God, in my time, I've got you. It's in my time. Now, I do think that I can lengthen that or shorten it by my mindset and what I'm doing. And that goes back to what I'm putting in. I don't watch horror movies. I don't listen to songs with a lot of cussing and things like that in it, even though I'm known to say a wordy dirt here and there. Because I find when I do, my mindset gets jacked up. You know what I mean? I believe fear is the opposite of faith. So when I sit and watch horror movies, I do like a good suspense movie. I can watch a horror movie. It's not a big deal. But I know when I'm constantly putting that in, I'm not leaving room for anything positive to come in. I got on a big Bigfoot kick. Like, I love Bigfoot, aliens. Like, I love conspiracies. I don't believe they're all true, but I believe there's truth to all of them. When I find myself diving into that stuff, I find myself not producing anything good. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But there are times when I just get a little dose of it, I scratch my itch, I'm good. But then I'm listening to worship at work, or I'm listening to somebody preaching at work, or not even that sometimes. Sometimes it's just something positive and motivating, you know what I mean? It's nothing spiritual, nothing negative, nothing. It really does. What you put in is what you're going to put out. There's truth in that.
Yeah, we used to think my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, we were like, man, they are so loony. They won't let them watch anything. Like, they can't watch anything like past TV PG. And I was like, what? And like, they had this, Angel Network cable, like, which is something like nobody ever had. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of that or not, but it's like it's a
Every
Christian
show
satellite.
on it sucks. It's so cheesy. Yeah.
There's a whole Little House on the Prairie,
Yeah.
And but now, like, me and Alicia's turned into those people. We're like, what are you doing? That better not be TikTok.
Yeah.
Get off that,
Yeah.
and like now we only watch like cartoons all the time. Like that's it. And you still have to watch those too. Like certain ones you got to watch. But yeah, I mean, but it's that's kind of how we're living our life now, is like trying to put good in and not the bad. So
Well, I think we fail to realize our spiritual lives are just as important as our physical lives. And you've lost what? How much you lost? 100 pounds?
105.
105 pounds.
oh wow.
So obviously, I mean, I can tell by looking at you, just in your shoulders and your arms. I've never seen Drake with muscles. You know what I mean? And like, I mean, you look great.
Appreciate
you know what I mean? But I know you feel better.
Yeah.
And I know it comes not only from exercise, but watching what you eat and things like that. I don't like to exercise. Not that I enjoy exercising like I do. I feel great till the next day. And it's like, I don't like to hurt. I'm a sissy when it comes to pain. So I don't do it. But I know I'm 45 years old. You know what I'm saying? And you know, it's never too late to start. But at some point, it's harder to start, But it's the same thing with your spiritual walk. The more you put the sugar in, the fatter you're going to get, and you're no good to anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But when you begin to take care of your spiritual self, as in you do your physical self, and there again, you may not believe the way we're talking. You may not believe in Christ or whatever. I challenge you to, if you don't, because I know it sounds like all doom and gloom we're talking about, but I absolutely would not be where I'm at right now without a relationship with Jesus. And I've pushed that aside for a moment. If you don't think that way and don't believe that way, that's fine. That's on you. But you better still put something positive into your brain as much as you are your physical body, if that makes sense, Because if not, you're just going to be a lush. You may be the best, have the best body in the world, can bench press a Mack truck. But if your brain's not in it, you know what I mean? Like, you're just going to continue to have problems. And that comes from what you're feeding yourself through your ears and your eyes, in my opinion.
That was one of the biggest things I learned mentally through my body, because when I first started working out, I literally thought about quitting. Because I was like, God, I can't stand up.
Yeah.
Like, I hit squats yesterday, I can't stand up today. But at the same time, I was like, you got to push through it.
Yeah.
And there'll be a day where you can go in there and do that same weight, and that's your warm up.
Yeah.
And I look at that mentally as, man, I had those down days, but just push through.
Yeah.
And I started applying that to mentally, spiritually. If I'm feeling down, I need to feed myself so I can get back up and do it the next day.
Well, and that's the thing, sugar tastes good. The sweets taste good. The drinks taste good. The water's just bland, and, the broccoli's bland, but it's what makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? You're not lethargic and drained and things like that. And when my wife listens to this, she's going, why don't you take your own advice? Because, she eats healthy. She's lost 50-something pounds, and in my mind, she didn't need to lose any weight. But now that I see that she has, it's like, holy crap, she's lost a lot of weight, And the thing she eats, like, smells like farts, like it's terrible. But she's a lot healthier than I am. And she, and yeah, it's got a lot to do with it. Mental and physical. If you apply your mental health the way you apply to your physical health, you're definitely going to be a lot better off,
See, I became a creature of habit.
Yeah.
With TV, movies, music, like, I watch and listen to these same things over and over again.
Yeah.
It's not because I'm afraid to try something new. It's because I know what
it is.
What I can tolerate.
Yeah, I know what I like. Yeah.
I may give something new, and if it's not good the first time, I'm like,
yeah,
everybody's like, well, give it another shot.
I'm the same way.
First impressions speak volumes to me.
Yeah.
So, like, I always tell everybody I don't watch a lot of TV, and I really don't. Like, my comfort place is video games. Wife's asleep, playing video games.
Mm-hmm.
Brings out the worst in me sometimes.
Sure.
But I still have the same comfort shows. I'll just watch them in cycles.
Yeah, I do too.
Same movies. Like, I love comedy.
Me too. I watch The Office every night.
Dude.
It drives my wife crazy, but, like, I don't care to find anything else. And I'm not saying The Office is, like, the best thing, I guess. There's some negative stuff in it. But for me, it's not just filth. It's funny. and it's a chance for me to be able to shut my brain down because I already know what's going on. I'm not having to focus on it.
Yeah.
I'm not having to pay attention to it. Andy Griffith was that for a long time for me. I'd watch it every single night, a couple episodes, drift off to sleep. I did the same thing with The Office, but it's not because I'm just so infatuated with The Office. It's because I like it and I know what it's about, and I don't have to worry about anything getting me off my game as far as that goes, you know.
That's like with music.
Yep.
I used to listen to hip hop nonstop, and then I transitioned to like metalcore. I found metalcore when it was like I was listening to Christian metalcore, and I still listen to a lot of that. But now I'm a country music guy.
Yeah.
You know, all the roads, as curvy and hilly as they've been, like where I'm at physically, mentally, spiritually, everything is probably the best I've ever been.
Yeah.
And I only want to make it better.
Yeah.
And like I said, you know, started praying and stuff daily to this point, and I don't throw it out there for everybody to see. Or if you look on paper, you're like, this dude is a hoodlum.
Well, but I think that's what God, you know, God tells us to go to our secret place to pray. You know what I mean? To go. It's not for everybody to see and everybody to know.
No.
Because when you're doing that, it's, hey, look at what I'm doing. Patting me on the back,
Yeah.
you know. When you're doing it by yourself and you're walking it out by yourself, that's when you begin to figure it out, you know. So
That's how I used to do it for likes and shares.
yeah.
And now it's like, my wife hearing this, she's probably like, when'd you start that?
Yeah.
Nope. I couldn't tell you when, but I've been doing it.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel better. Like,
Yeah.
You know, she probably knows though. Like she can
Yeah,
probably
she
tell.
sees it.
She can see it.
She sees it. She
can-
knows.
Yeah.
I mean, we
She
don't
sees
give them the credit that, you know, that they deserve.
There's
for sure.
2 people in the planet that I've ever seen right there. It was Dad and my wife.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They probably know us better than we know ourselves, you know, for sure.
I know, like when I started coming out of the dark place and everything. I mean, Alicia was like, "You've changed," and I was like, "What do you mean?" You know, it's like she could see it. Like she knew that me now versus me, I don't know, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, it's different. And, you know, and she could see it. So I don't know. They always seem to know.
Well,
I think she can tell because I smile more.
yeah. Well, I mean, whenever I got saved, I remember I went to work one day and this guy came up and I knew him, but I didn't know him. I knew his name. I talked to him, spoke to him. He was in sales. I was working out in the shop, and he come by and he stopped me, looked at me, and he said, "Man, have you been sick?" And I said, "What do you mean? I'm here every day." He said, "No, have you been sick?" And I said, I don't think so. You know, not that I'm aware of. Why?" He said, "I don't know. You look different. You look healthy. Like there's a glow about you." And I mean, like, I had gotten saved like within that week. I'd given my life to Christ, you know. And I said, "No, I don't know, man. Maybe it's the lighting. Yeah, I don't know." And he said, "Well, either way, man, have a good day, whatever." And he's walking off. And as he's walking off, I said, "I got saved." And he said, "That's it." And that's the thing. People can see Christ in you.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? But remove Christ. You can't remove Christ. But let's remove him for just a second. When your mental health is good, people can see that. You know what I mean? So, I don't know how you can keep your mental health good without Jesus, in my opinion. But there's a difference. You know what I mean?
It's definitely gotten better since I started praying again.
Oh, absolutely, man. I mean, you know, and that's the thing. Your walk with God is your walk. It doesn't matter how Brittany wants you to do it or how Candace wants me to do it or Alicia wants you to do it. You got to do it the way you got to do it. You can take their advice. You can take anybody's advice on it, but ultimately it's your relationship. Same with, you know, tackling your mental health, however you choose to do it, which is, to me, in my opinion, one thing our country doesn't focus enough on are mentally ill people. But there's a difference in being mentally ill and possibly having some chemical imbalances in your head and life. And you still fall under those categories when you fill out that piece of paper. But there's a difference in being, and he said, let me break it down like this to you. He said, there's a difference in being bipolar and being bipolar. You can be bipolar because you're struggling with issues. Or you can be bipolar, mentally ill, and gonna kill somebody, you know what I mean? They said, and need help. Either way, you need help, you know what I mean? And it's, you either talk to somebody or talk to God. You got to figure it out. And we just, That's to me one issue we don't. Number one, we don't want to talk about because we don't want anybody to think we're crazy, you know. But number two, people don't know how to talk to us about it. I put a post on Facebook and I felt like God told me to, and I know it looked terrible. I know it looked like I'm fixing to blow my brains out. You know what I mean? And the reason I know that is because I got about 6 phone calls within 10 hours.
I got a screenshot of that sent to me.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that those people reached out because I know they love me.
I'm such a good friend. I didn't even text you about
Yeah,
it. You know, I read it and it was like, I'll get to it later.
Yeah. But the thing about it is I know how it looked. I know how it came across. But what nobody knows are the 50 direct messages I got in that 12 hours saying, man, that's exactly how I feel. And that's what pushed me to start this. You know what I mean? I'm not by any means suicidal. You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean that I haven't thought about it. It doesn't mean that I don't have those how far can I get moments without anybody knowing. But it does mean that I don't necessarily know how to talk about it. You know, let me break this down to you because I know how it looked. You know what I mean? And honestly, had it been you that had posted it, I would have reached out the same way. I may not have just blatantly said, are you going to kill? But sometimes maybe that's just what needs to be said, you know? But I don't think that we reach out enough or we overreach. And a lot of that is because when we're going through it, don't know how to talk about it, don't know how to share it, don't know how to put it out there, you know?
That's a wrap. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. If you enjoyed that episode, please go and check out part 2. It should be available now. If you're watching us on YouTube and you like what you heard and want more content from us, please subscribe, hit that like button, and leave us a comment. If you're listening on Spotify or some other podcast platform, please hit that join follow button and leave us a comment. It really does matter. It helps us and everyone involved who's been on the show to get their story out there, and that's what it's about. If you'd like to be a part of the show or have an idea of something you would like us to discuss or talk about, leave us a comment or shoot us an email at amongtheashes@yahoo.com. Thanks again for checking us out. Remember, Jesus loves you and so do we. Keep your head up.